turns purple when he's coaching, and he's sweating like Fred Flintstone. And I'm like, I think he's going to drop dead coaching, which is probably where he wants to go, wouldn't you think?
It's Farrell Coast to Coast with Scott Farrell. Weekdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, on the home of the winning edge, the SportsGrid Radio Network. The new SportsGrid app is now available on iOS and the App Store. Experience the ultimate sports betting companion that provides personalized content from your favorite hosts, in-depth matchup previews, game and prop picks, live odds, stats, scores, and more, all in one place. And of course, on the SportsGrid app, you can tune into our live television and radio coverage anytime, on the go, wherever you are. Download the SportsGrid app on the iOS App Store now. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Chinese researchers have created a robot that can identify plants just by touching them. Mimicking the delicate touch of human skin, identifying plant species with 97% accuracy, sensing moisture and texture machine vision can't see. The goal? An army of robot farm workers tirelessly monitoring, fertilizing, and applying pesticide to individual plants 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, increasing crop yields. Even identifying dangerous plant species.
That would be poison ivy.
Follow me at G. Capalbo on X, and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
When the weather cools off, Major League Baseball playoffs heat up. Sit tight. The World Series is coming. Keep it here for every bit of the action with strategies and information to give you the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
It's the opening kickoff with Carver and Lisi.
Aloha! And welcome to Carver and Lisi on Sirius XM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks. I am your host for today, Matthias Burbell, producer of the Carver and Lisi Show, producer of Sports Rage Tonight, Sports Rage Game Day, producer at SportsGrid Radio Networks. And we are rolling today, sans Lisi, sans Carver. First time I can actually say that sitting in this chair. And we're going to have a damn good time today. Just because they're gone doesn't mean that the show will not roll on. We go forward, we move forward, and we're going to take the tackle. We're going to make the tackle, and we're going to go all the way to the end zone. Big show today. I promise you guys that right now. Jamie Eisenberg, CBS Sports, joins the program today to chat some fantasy football. Fantasy playoffs are right around the corner this weekend, next weekend, and then the championship. Big times are ahead of us in the NFL. So Jamie will jump on, give us a little preview, his sleepers, his starts, do not starts, running backs, wide receivers. We're going to dive in with Jamie Eisenberg. It's going to be a damn good times, everybody. Also, Mike Detillier from WWL 870 in Louisiana. Also, SaintsReport.com will join us today. It'll be a badass time. We're going to dive into what went wrong with LSU, but of course, we're going to talk about the college football playoff, the 12 teams. Also, look ahead to next season, possibly. Obviously, some Saints. They've been winning games in a row, so we're talking to the right guy with Mike Detillier. You know, he's been around for a long time, has great stories with the new coach of the Saints, Coach Rizzler. Obviously, Chip Kelly. Obviously, Coach Orgeron. Man, big-time coaches that Mike's been around for a long, long time. So it's going to be a pleasure to have him on and chat some college football. But we're not done there just yet. In hour number 2, Daryl Orlando Ledbetter will join us from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution to chat about the Atlanta Falcons and their free fall, losing game after game after game, whether or not they should start Penix against the Raiders on Monday Night Football, a game which I will be at, and I cannot wait to attend Monday Night Football, and hopefully the Falcons get the win. But it's going to be a damn good time with Daryl. I saved a very special guest today, Ben the Bane Davis, bare knuckle FC fighter, also judo, Muay Thai, play-by-play for UFC TV, Misfits, Sumo, the whole deal. The fighting universe knows Ben Davis right now. He is the man with a plan, and that is named Ben the Bane Davis. He will join us to start hour number 2, actually, and we're going to chat UFC 310 and what happened this past weekend, but also get you ready for UFC Tampa coming up this weekend, get you some best bets for UFC Tampa. I have a vent session, actually, to get with Ben the Bane Davis because of what happened at UFC 310 this past weekend. But the guest list is jam-packed. Also, Chris Monter, how could I forget? Chris Monter from collegebasketballnews.com will join us at the end of hour number 2 to chat some college basketball. College basketball has been kicking off, has been on fire with the preseason tournaments going down. Kansas, Duke, Tennessee, now the new number 1 in the land. All that and more on Carver and Lisi. And yeah, I am the host, Matthias Burbella, and we are ready to roll. Man, show's jam-packed, but let's go. First segment of the show, man. Let's start with last night with the Cowboys. What the hell happened to the Cowboys against the Bengals? The Bengals played a mediocre game and get away with the W in Dallas after a blocked punt in the fourth quarter. I don't think I've ever in my life seen a team block a punt in that point in the game at that yardage, that momentum swinging type of play, and not win the game because they can't recover their own block punt. I was shocked last night when I saw the Cowboys block the punt. I said, oh my God, it's in the stars for the Cowboys to win. The Bengals, it's just not their year. But sure enough, a Cowboy goes up and tries to catch the ball after it was blocked, hits off of his shoulder pad trying to make the catch. Cowboys end up jumping on the Bengals end up jumping on the ball around midfield with about a minute and 50 seconds left, or if it's a 2-minute warning after they block the punt. Jamar Chase scores a major touchdown after the recovery. I'm still stunned that the Bengals even have the damn ball. I'm still stunned. You know, I'm working Sports Rage tonight with Gabe Morency last night, Sports Rage Game Day, as we call it every Monday and Thursday. Gabe needs a couple more yards from Chase and another touchdown from Chase. He's already pissed off because the over's not going to cash. They're looking like somebody's going to win with a field goal. Either Cade York or Aubrey was going to win it with a field goal, it looked like. And all of a sudden, Joe Burrow connects with Jamar Chase, wins the game with a touchdown, gives the Cowboys about a minute and change left to possibly go down and tie the game or maybe win the game with a 2-point conversion after the touchdown. And Cooper Rush sucked it up after he got the ball. But man, what an unfortunate loss for the Cowboys. Looking at Micah Parsons run off on the sidelines after the loss, I understood his feeling of frustration. I really did. I understood how angry he was and like just the shock that's probably going through his mind, as a player, thinking, what a play you just made. First of all, you get the big third down stop to possibly get the ball back and go down the field and win the game with a field goal for Brandon Aubrey. That guy could kick 65-yard field goals. So you know what I mean? The upper hand was for the Cowboys, who are having a terrible season. But to get this win on Monday Night Football would have been a big deal. You know what I mean? National stage, Jerry's World, against a former Super Bowl finalist and Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. It was a really good feel-good moment for a team that hasn't had a feel-good moment all season. Same with the Bengals, though. But my God, to see Micah Parsons walking off just shocked. And I can't even lie about it. When they recovered the ball, I was confused at how they even got the ball because the Bengals never had clear possession of the ball. So I thought to myself, okay, the Cowboys get the ball back. They never got a clear possession of the ball. How could it be Bengals ball? But little did I know, on the punt, dummy that I am, my dumbass, thinking, oh, well, big deal. I didn't know right away that the Bengals were going to get possession until I started seeing the special teams coordinator on the sidelines for the Cowboys just look devastated. And right there and then I'm thinking, oh man, well, I better study up the playbook and the rule book a little bit better because I was shocked, man. And, we have to start off with that, right? The shocking, devastating loss for the Dallas Cowboys after a blocked punt. If somebody could go on the YouTube and tell me when's the last time somebody saw a play like that happen, you know what I mean? Or go hit me up on Twitter, on X, @HipBurbell, and let me know when's the last time you saw a play like that happen in the NFL where a team blocks the punt and doesn't recover their own block punt. It's just, I'm still baffled by the whole damn thing. Lots of things going on in today's world outside of NFL, though. Around the NHL, the Sharks currently are down 1-0 to the Hurricanes in the first period, going to intermission. The Blue Jackets are down 3. The Canes and the Sharks are now 1-1 in the second period. The Philadelphia Flyers are 3-0 up against the Blue Jackets in Columbus. Also 0-0 into the second period in New Jersey. The Toronto Maple Leafs taking on the New Jersey Devils in New Jersey. The Avalanche winning on the road in Pittsburgh 2-0 against the Penguins. The Los Angeles Kings, up on the Islanders after the first period of play 1-0. Also 0-0, 0-0 for the Flames and the Predators in Nashville. Just getting underway in Winnipeg, where the Boston Bruins are tied 0-0 against the Jets. More action coming up later today in about 57 minutes from right now. The Lightning and the Oilers take on in Edmonton. The Wild are playing the Utah Hockey Club in Utah. The Panthers at the Kraken in Seattle. The Blues at the Canucks. Big slate in the NHL. Also, the NBA Cup is going on right now. We got some plays for later tonight also. So we got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Look at this odd boost right here. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Luka Doncic to each have 30 points or more, plus 240. Also, get ready for this. Klay Thompson over 2.5 3-pointers. Derek Lively over 7.5 rebounds. Isaiah Hartenstein over 11.5 pounds. And what else? Isaiah Hartenstein over 10.5 points. Coming up next, Jamie Eisenberg, fantasy football update with me, Matthias Babel. Stay tuned. This is Carver and Lisi on SiriusXM channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Coil up that garden hose. Ball is here. And SportsGrid has you covered with strategies and info on football, baseball, and everything else. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The early line.
I'm watching Atlanta defensively last week, and they were hitting Herbert left and right. If that defense shows up here against Minnesota and does that to Sam Darnold, you can get the Sam Darnold version of Kirk Cousins last week with 4 interceptions. So I think Atlanta is very much alive to not only cover but win this game outright.
It's the early line with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Weekdays, 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Know someone with a drinking or drug problem? Learn how to get sober after we share these stories.
I was 35 with 2 beautiful children when my life and addiction started to spiral out of control. After my divorce, I went into a depression cycle and started drinking more often and using prescription drugs. After my second DWI and arrest, my ex-husband threatened to take our children away from me.
I was 17 when I became addicted to heroin and meth. I thought I could quit on my own, but I couldn't. It hit me when I was arrested.
Get sober now. Your private insurance may cover costs and we'll get you here. It's simple. Just call Elite Rehab Placement right now. Please, don't wait. Your life matters to us. 800-959-6348. 800-959-6348. 800-959-6348. Call right now before it's too late. That's 800-959-6348.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Grady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Days are getting cooler.
The shadows are getting longer.
You know what that means? It's football weather. So bundle up and keep it here for all the latest strategies and gridiron information. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Carver and Lisi on SiriusXM channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks. I am your host, Matthias Burbell, producer of the Carver and Lisi Show, producer of Sports Rage Tonight, Sports Rage Game Day, and now we are rolling on Carver and Lisi, and I have some great guests all day on this show. And now you know it's time for the fantasy playoff talk. Big weekend coming up. Big weekends coming up. If you survive in advance fantasy football, it is time. So I got to get you the best fantasy football analyst in the game, and that's Jamie Eisenberg, NFL analyst for CBS Sports, ready to talk some fantasy football playoff weekend with me. Let's roll. What's up, Jamie? Welcome to the show, my friend.
It's good to talk to you, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course I have to have you on. You're the best fantasy analyst in the game. It's time to get your picks for this weekend. Lots of people ask you for your best picks every single weekend, and this is the biggest weekend yet because it's survive in advance. Who are your risers? Who are your followers for this week? As we know, Jamie, once we get to fantasy playoffs, it's all about the matchups. Who are some of your top sleepers and some of your top, you better start them, must starts of the week this week?
Well, it's a big day because it's waiver wire day, so we could start with some of the guys that are going to be popular off the waiver wire. And I think you look at the running back position with the situation in San Francisco. Isaac Guerrero banged up. You have a short week, so Thursday night game, we could see Patrick Taylor coming off a game where he had a touchdown. He's somebody that could be a potential starting running back for a lot of fantasy managers. Adam Thielen's as hot as any wide receiver in the NFL right now, coming off 2 amazing games, 17 catches, 200 yards, and a touchdown in back-to-back weeks on 21 targets. And Bryce Young's playing well. Now they get a matchup against Dallas, just lost a key member of their defense. I think Thielen's worth starting in almost every league. Like I would start him over DK Metcalf, for example, if you want to just talk about a name wide receiver. Quarterbacks, there's a couple guys I think that you can get off waivers and start this week, and that's Anthony Richardson. I do think the Denver defense has played very well this year, but they're a little bit banged up right now, as we saw last time they played. And Richardson's been very good in 2 of his last 3 games. Huge game for the Colts. So I think he'll use his legs, as we know, and give you an opportunity to be a starting fantasy quarterback. And the same with Jameis Winston. We got the full Winston experience in the last couple of weeks with multiple touchdowns, multiple turnovers, a couple pick sixes. But he's been pretty consistent from a fantasy perspective, from a point-getting scenario. And I think he'll get his points this week in what should be a good matchup against the Chiefs. At tight end, I like the situation for Hunter Henry. He's been getting a lot of targets from Drake May lately. So these are all guys that you can grab off waivers and potentially start this week, which is, kind of fun knowing that we are in the playoffs and matchups, like you said, do matter, but also guys that are playing well and the ability to find them off waivers. That's a fun way to win your league if you're able to do so.
Not for sure. You gave a great example, with the Browns, and also I love your Thielen pick. I know a lot of guys have been throwing Adam Thielen in the mix right now, considering what he's done over the last few weeks. The turnaround from Bryce Young over the last month has been spectacular, and it's decision times, man. Here's a scenario for you, and I'm sure lots of guys have these different types of scenarios. If you're stacked at receiver, and you got a guy like Puka Nacua, who's playing at San Francisco on Thursday Night Football. If you have PPR, he's projected to have 20.7 points. You got to start him no matter what, right? Nacua is a must start no matter what the format is and no matter who else you have, pretty much. Am I wrong?
No, 100%. It's great that he was able to come back from, the knee injury that he suffered. Got a little concerned when he was a little gimpy on the sidelines in the game against Buffalo, but he fought through it, and he's just become the stud that, we thought he was going to be coming into the year. It was a question of, okay, who's going to be the go-to guy now that you have a healthy Cooper Kupp? Well, you've seen what the numbers have been. And, while Kupp has been fantastic as well, he's clearly the 1A or the 2. Puka is the 1 in this offense. They're giving him opportunities with some carries on some jet sweeps. He looks explosive, so as long as he stays healthy, Matthew Stafford will lean on him. This matchup against San Francisco is obviously tough, but it's not as tough as it has been in years past. Keep an eye on some of the injuries there for San Francisco defense. For example, Nick Bosa, if he comes back, that makes things tougher for the passing game there for the Rams. But obviously, with what Puka has shown us, with what he should be able to do this game, rest of the season, yes, he's locked in as a top 3, if not number 1 fantasy receiver. And he was competing with Jamar Chase just to be the best guy at that spot.
A clear must start. Look, he almost had a 50-point game this past week against the Buffalo Bills. Just absurd. Other guys that who are good players going into the season, people had him highly ranked as guys like Calvin Ridley. Garrett Wilson was going top 2, rounds top 1, round 1 or round 2, towards the end of round 1 or round 2. But Jerry Jeudy, I say Jerry Jeudy because a lot of guys have had Jerry Jeudy sitting on the bench pretty much all season long, except for the last couple of weeks. And I bet you a bunch of guys had him benched when he put up the 40 points against Denver, where he had 9 receptions for 235 yards and a touchdown. Would you start a Jerry Jeudy this week, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, over a guy like Garrett Wilson or over a guy like Calvin Ridley?
Over Calvin Ridley, easy. Garrett Wilson's clearly coming off a strong game and has a great matchup against Jacksonville himself. So those guys are in a similar range for me. I do think Jeudy is a little bit safer because of the concussion situation that Cedric Tillman's dealing with. And yes, I did not expect Jeudy to have that game against Denver because I thought Denver would put their best cornerback on him given the way that he had performed. And they decided to let a third-string guy in Levi Wallace chase him around, which, as we saw, did not work out very well. So the Chiefs' defense has certainly not been as stout the last couple of weeks against wide receivers as it was in the beginning part of the season, and they've dealt with some injuries in their secondary. So I think it's a good opportunity for Jeudy to continue to be the go-to guy for Jameis Winston. Who knew that Jameis Winston was the key to making Jerry Jeudy a superstar? And so this, pairing has been fantastic. I hope to see these guys continue to look for each other. Winston continue to look for Jeudy and him continue to be productive. So for this week, I would hate to sit either of the top two guys you mentioned, Wilson or Jeudy, but I would start both over Ridley this week just based on how Ridley has underperformed, even in a good matchup coming up against Cincinnati.
It's tough decisions, absolutely. I love the name. The first name we threw out there was Adam Thielen. Would you put Adam Thielen over Wilson? Would you put Adam Thielen over Ridley? Because these are great problems to have. Would you put Adam Thielen over Jerry Jeudy?
I would not put him over Jeudy. I would not put him over Wilson. I would put him over Ridley, though. Again, I just look at what he's doing right now. And first off, the situation for Ridley is a little bit concerning because we don't know if Will Levis is going to play. Hurt his shoulder in the game against Jacksonville, and really did not have the game I was expecting to have. This is a great matchup, though. Cincinnati's been so bad against most wide receivers. So it's not like I'm saying to sit Calvin Ridley outright. You're just talking about some great options here. And with the way Ridley's playing right now, also in a great matchup against Dallas, his quarterback is a little bit safer and playing better than the Titans situation right now. So Bryce Young is leaning on Adam Thielen. He's producing. So for me, he's almost a must-start wide receiver. I do like Jeudy and Wilson better, but Thielen's right behind.
We are talking to Jamie Eisenberg from CBS Sports, the world's top NFL fantasy analyst. We will be back right with him after this short break. Stay tuned. This is Carver and Lisi on SiriusXM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks. We will be back right after this.
Fall is coming. Don't look like an idiot at work. Know your stuff. Football and everything else. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channel dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and SiriusXM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Moneyline at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
And now let's go to the big game of the year. Up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
1939, the National Football League Championship at the Dairy Bowl in Wisconsin. The Green Bay Packers shut out the New York Giants 27-0.
Len Bonham's long pass was intercepted by Svensson for the Packers, and Giant hopes a shutout.
For Green Bay, it was their 5th championship in the last 10 years. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
Do you think that Bruce Pearl will drop dead coaching basketball? So I'm watching this guy coach last night, and he was purple. I mean, my man turns purple when he's coaching, and he's sweating like Fred Flintstone. And I'm like, I think he's going to drop dead coaching, which is probably where he wants to go, wouldn't you think?
It's Pharrell Coast to Coast with Scott Farrell. Weekdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, on the home of the winning edge, the SportsGrid Radio Network. Right before your very eyes, the boys of summer are about to become the champions of fall. MLB playoffs are coming, and SportsGrid will bring you all the angles, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
What's up, NFL fantasy football fans? It is Carver and Lisi, and we are rolling on SiriusXM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks. I am your host, Matthias Burbell, and I have a great guest right now talking fantasy football, Jamie Eisenberg from CBS Sports. Man, I call him the #1 NFL fantasy analyst in the world, and it's a pleasure to have him on. We are talking scenarios and getting you ready for NFL fantasy playoff weekend. And now we're going to move to some backs. We were talking some receiver combinations in the previous segment. And you know, I want to talk some running backs, because running backs, you know, the horses of the cavalry, I'd like to say, you know, it's a big pick for them. What running backs that people have been starting all season long, would you sit this weekend? Who are guys to stay away from this coming weekend if you're a guy who loves to play this, this certain running back, like a Derrick Henry, for example? Derrick Henry is obviously a must-start every single weekend, in my opinion, but what matchup do you think you shouldn't start some key running backs?
The one that concerns me the most of a guy that's been playing well is Tyrone Tracy, just because the quarterback situation for the Giants is bad, and he's facing a really good run defense of the Ravens. The offensive line's a little bit beat up again for the Giants, and so Tracy's somebody that concerns me. You look at Isaiah Pacheco, we thought he was going to have some big moments coming back, and he hasn't had that yet. Now, he could certainly score against the Browns, but he's just been sharing too much work with Kareem Hunt to make me say that he's a slam dunk starter. You have the situation in Chicago where DeAndre Swift has not taken advantage of Roschon Johnson being out. Johnson could return this week, and Swift is just not a very trustworthy running back at this point, taking on a really good run defense of Minnesota. Travis Etienne has been one of the bigger busts this season, and so to trust him in the fantasy playoffs is completely dicey. It's not a bad matchup against the Jets, but Tank Bigsby seems to be getting more work from a running perspective, and if he's not getting all the work in the passing game, which hasn't been the case for Etienne just in terms of his numbers, he's an easy guy to get away from. So there's a few guys right there that make me a little bit nervous for this week.
Zach Charbonnet had an incredible game this past week in Arizona, stepping up for the hurt Kenneth Walker. Do you have an update on Kenneth Walker III right now, taking on Green Bay on Sunday Night Football this week? Projected to have 16.3 points if he does play. Would you start him even if he is available?
I would at this point, just because it helps people out a little bit more the other way, that if he sits, it gives people the opportunity to trust Charbonnet fully, and he's look like an absolute stud. So I would almost rather they rest Ken Walker and get him back to 100% than to rush him back out there. And for a team that's got playoff aspirations right now, they're leading the NFC West. So I think they're going to be cautious with Walker. So Charbonnet can easily handle the role. And we've seen it now 3 games this season, weeks 2 and 3 where Walker was out in this past game, where Charbonnet looks like an absolute stud. So it's not an ideal situation to have a gimpy Walker sharing with Charbonnet, where Charbonnet may get too much work and ruin Walker, but not enough that you can fully trust him because Walker's there. So I like to set up for Charbonnet as a solo act. I would hate this to be a tandem for this week. For me, I would say if Mike McDonald was asking me my thoughts on the Seahawks backfield, I would say, give Ken Walker another week and let Charbonnet go.
The way that Charbonnet was running, he was running angry this past weekend, man. When he broke out for that big run, you could tell he's been sitting in the shed waiting to be unleashed. And I'm with you, Jamie. If you're a Kenneth Walker owner, you're probably really annoyed right now, considering he's had spectacular games this season, has ran the ball hard, has had a pretty consistent season for the most part. He's been out a game or two here and there, but nothing major and significant. So to get to this point in the fantasy playoffs and not have him is a pretty big bummer. A guy who a lot of people drafted high in this year's draft was Isaiah Pacheco from the Kansas City Chiefs. He obviously broke his fibula, and he came back over the last 2 games. Would you start a Pacheco comfortably?
I think it depends on who else you have on your team. It just hasn't been the ideal situation for him. He could score a touchdown. That's what we've seen from the Browns. They give up a lot of rushing touchdowns. Going back to the Saints game when Taysom Hill, operating as a running back, was just running right through them. So you know how the Chiefs play. It's going to be a low-scoring game most likely. We're going to see a close game going into the fourth quarter. They may be trailing at some point, and that's not necessarily the format for Pacheco. I don't like they haven't used him in the passing game as much as they were earlier this year. So they've used Kareem Hunt, they used Samaje Perine. I think for them, they're just trying to make sure they manage Pacheco snaps and make sure he's ready for the playoffs when they flip that switch and get ready to make that Super Bowl run. So he's more of a flex option than a must-start running back. It's not based on a matchup. It's just, I think, the situation of where they are with their team, where he is in terms of his touches. He may go off against the Browns. They're just not that great of a defense. But until we see that, it's hard to say must-start running back. So unfortunately for the managers who have stashed him, I don't think you have a safe option. I just think you have somebody that if you need him, hopefully he'll get those 15-plus touches and falls into the end zone this week.
We have been talking to Jamie Eisenberg, fantasy analyst from CBSSports.com. On your way out, Jamie, one last question for you. Who is your number 1 sleeper for the next couple weeks that will win your league and you didn't expect him to?
Anthony Richardson. You look at what he's done in 2 of his last 3 games coming into their bye week, and he was 25-plus fantasy points if you're talking 6 points for passing touchdowns. Not the easiest matchup this week against Denver, but look, we thought he was going to be done. When they benched him, it looked like Joe Flacco might finish out the season as the Colts were hoping to salvage their season. And Richardson comes in, he wins 2 of 3 games. He looks like he's a much better quarterback. He looks more prepared. I would love for him to get Josh Downs back because that's been his best receiver, so not having him hasn't been ideal, so hopefully the bye week allows that shoulder to heal up. But if Richardson can get right, he has as much upside as any quarterback in fantasy because of what he does with his legs. So hopefully he can finish the season strong. This is a really interesting week, though, taking on the Broncos.
Fall is here.
It's getting cooler.
Football and the World Series are coming in. Life is good.
SportsGrid makes it better.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Chinese researchers have created a robot that can identify plants just by touching them. Mimicking the delicate touch of human skin, identifying plant species with 97% accuracy, sensing moisture and texture machine vision can't see.
That's a very good practice.
The goal? An army of robot farm workers tirelessly monitoring, fertilizing, and applying pesticide to individual plants 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, increasing crop yields. Even identifying dangerous plant species.
That would be poison ivy.
Follow me at G. Capalbo on X, and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
If you turned 65 recently like me, it's important you find a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you the coverage you're looking for. But finding one can be difficult. The best thing I did, and I suggest you do the same, is call a licensed insurance agent and let them walk you through your Medicare Advantage plan options. There are so many benefits you have access to, so make the call now and let the representatives explain everything to you. Our licensed insurance agents can offer you a variety of Medicare Advantage plans. Plus, the call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation to enroll. We're here to make it easy for you to select a Medicare Advantage plan that may work for your needs. Finding a Medicare Advantage plan can be easy if you do what I did. Make a quick call right now to learn more. Thank you.
800-365-6303. 800-365-6303. 800-365-6303. That's 800-365-6303.
Fall is almost here. It's time to stow the lawnmower and get ready for all that glorious action coming your way. Stay tuned to SportsGrid for all the strategies, angles, and info you need to get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Hello and welcome back to Carver and Lisi on Sirius XM channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Network. I told you guys we had a big show lined up today. Guest after guest, big time guest after big time guest, and we're starting off strong with Mike Detillier from WWL Radio in Louisiana, also from the SaintsReport.com. We're going to jump into the college football playoff right now. We're going to jump into LSU and what went wrong with Brian Kelly and LSU, and also a little bit with the Saints. But with no further ado, let's jump into it. Mike Detillier from WWL Radio in Louisiana and the SaintsReport.com. Welcome to Carver and Lisi, Mike. It's a pleasure to have you on, sir.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you, Mike. We've been doing this for a long time now, going back to Honolulu, Hawaii. I've loved chatting with you every single time we chat about some Southern football. You have the greatest accent in the world. You have the greatest knowledge of football in the world. But let's jump right into it, man. You have the best stories, Mike. You've given me some great stories from the Rizzler. You gave me some great stories from Coach Orgeron, from Brian Kelly, and I know you got more stories up your sleeve. But let me ask you this, starting with Brian Kelly. How is he doing after another, I don't want to say unsuccessful season at LSU, but if you're not in the college football playoff and you're an LSU guy, if you're not having national championship aspirations and you're an LSU guy, you're not doing it right. So I know, knowing you, that you're not all glamour and blitz for this Texas Bowl against Baylor coming up on New Year's Eve for LSU. How would you rate this LSU season, and what do you think of the SEC right now, especially with Alabama being left out of the college football playoff?
Well, right off the bat, against USC, they get clocked in a game they should have won. And, they got on a little roll, but they never could really get anything that you could really hang your hat on offensively. They were an offensively minded team. You lose a lot when Jaden Daniels left. And maybe he masked some of the deficiencies that this team had up front. They do a great job protecting the quarterback, pass protection. They can't move anybody at the point of attack, and didn't all year. Defensively, that was the big area for me. I had a lot of question marks about defensive interior. I knew they had found a couple of pass rushers in Savion Jones and Braden Swinson, but, teams ran on them quite a bit, and they had trouble with the option quarterbacks, and you saw it. If it was the second half against Texas A&M, Jalen Milroe goes in the College Football Hall of Fame, I would take the film that he played both times against LSU. If it was two-hand touch, he still would have scored every time. They didn't get close to him. So it was a major disappointment how this team finished off. And the hope is that they can get Garrett Nussmeier to come back for another season at LSU. That would certainly make a lot of sense. We saw what happened with Joe Burrow, who was a good player year one. He was a great player in year two. Jaden Daniels, good player in year one. Heisman Trophy winner last year. But it's disappointing on both sides of the football, to be honest with you, that they could not really sustain anything on both offense and defense. That falls on Brian's shoulders. He can talk about the lack of talent. Well, who's bringing them in? You've had 3 years to recruit and hit the transfer portal. A lot of the problems stem from the first couple of years, them missing on a lot of defensive linemen and cornerbacks in the transfer portal. They really whiffed on a lot of that, to be honest with you. They have a lot of young wide receivers. They need a guy who's been there, done that. So I would suspect they're going to go get a wide receiver. And Mason Taylor really has become the Joe Burrow of tight ends at LSU. Mason was a pass-catching tight end, did a great job. I think he'll end up being a second-round pick in the NFL draft this coming April. Brian had always been known to bring in big tight ends, and now LSU has become a destination spot for tight ends. They've got 3 real young tight ends. I think they want to go out in the portal and get a tight end that has played some. Brian wants to use 2 tight ends. That has always been part of his mantra. They've been god-awful at the safety position. So I would say defensive tackle and safety on defense. On offense, it would be wide receiver along with tight end.
That will change things around for them in an instant, Mike. Looking at their schedule this year, they go out losing to USC in the first game of the season. I remember you told me back when the season started, when you were talking to Kelly, you told them just win, baby. They obviously don't get the job done against USC, but then they go on and they win 6 games in a row. And I guess now that the season's over, I guess I'm a little bit surprised that they beat Ole Miss, considering the year that Ole Miss had this season, their killer offense. Then they go on and beat Arkansas, but then they lose 3 critical games against Texas A&M, Alabama, which you mentioned, Jalen Milroe growing off every single one of those games, and Florida. 3 consecutive games in late October, the beginning of November. What happened in that stretch that really put LSU behind the 8 ball and really going into the college football playoff? You knew they weren't going to get in after those 3 games. What was the tension like around LSU at that time? Is the honeymoon era over with Brian Kelly right now, you'd say?
No question, okay? You got to produce. You're getting paid $9.5 million a year. Now, he's got 6 more years left on that contract. So there's no way LSU's going to eat that. Brian's got to produce big time. And he's went out, they've spent a ton of money on Bo Davis as a defensive line coach, Coach Baker as a defensive coordinator. It just has not gotten it done. And yes, a lot of heat. I think the coming apart happened in the second half against Texas A&M. They changed quarterbacks, and Wegman, they had his number. And then all of a sudden, they go with the read option quarterback. LSU had no answer to it. None. And then you catch Milroe 2 weeks later, and he tears them up again. The Florida game, I think, was the biggest disappointment because at that time, Florida was just trying to hold water for Billy Napier. The score was no indication of how that game was played. LSU sort of dominated time of possession, the amount of plays, they couldn't score in the red zone. They were settling for field goals, and Florida got, again, hot in the second half. This football team has not played well to close games. It showed against Florida, and the Texas A&M game, I think, sort of unraveled them, and it got them putting some doubt about just how good they were after they had rattled off a number of wins. That's where it came apart this season. Brian's got to put confidence back in this football team. And I think a big part of it is if you can get Garrett Nussbaum to stay one more year. Brian has done a much better job recruiting than Coach O on the offensive line. I give him full credit there. He has done a very good job bringing in offensive linemen to LSU. So offensively, it all circles around turning, and you getting him a wide receiver tight end weapon on defense, hardest position to get today, defensive lineman. The very hardest to get. The safety spot is baffling to me. LSU was known for being DBU for years, and now they DBQ. They haven't played well in the secondary. Safety position was really bad this year. They got a little better at corner, but not at safety. It's a great need position for the Tigers. And they opened the season Clemson next year.
Yeah, they did, Mike.
Open the season against Clemson.
Oh, that's a big game. That's a big game. If Joe Lisi was here right now, he'd be crunching his teeth. He'd be ready to hit somebody. That's a massive game. We are talking to Mike Detillier from WWL 870 in Louisiana, also with the SaintsReport.com. And we will be back with Mike right after this on Carver and Lisi on Sirius XM Channel 159 on the Sports Grid Radio Network. We'll be back right after this.
Yeah, it's getting cooler. Football weather is here. Stay tuned for all the latest odds, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The new SportsGrid app is now available on iOS and the App Store. Experience the ultimate sports betting companion that provides personalized content from your favorite hosts. In-depth matchup previews, game and prop picks, live odds, stats, scores, and more. All in one place. And of course, on the SportsGrid app, you can tune into our live television and radio coverage anytime. On the go, wherever you are. Download the SportsGrid app on the iOS App Store now. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
And now let's go to the big game of the year. Up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
1939, the National Football League Championship at the Dairy Bowl in Wisconsin. The Green Bay Packers shut out the New York Giants 27-0.
Len Bonham's long pass was intercepted by Svensson for the Packers, and Giant hopes a shot.
For Green Bay, it was their 5th championship in the last 10 years. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Moneyline at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to SportsGrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
No way football is playing in the fall and winter.
Because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Hello, everybody. This is Carver and Lisi on Sirius XM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks. We are talking to Mike Detillier from WWL 870 in Louisiana and also the SaintsReport.com. We're talking LC football, SEC football. We are crunching the numbers with Mike. Now, I got to ask you this before we get to the Saints, Mike. When you saw the college football playoff get released this past week and you saw SMU play Clemson tooth and nail and everybody saying we think Alabama's going to be knocked out of the playoff, what was your reaction to that? You being, this SEC guy for so long and Alabama getting, in almost every single playoff so far, right? I don't think they've missed a playoff since the playoffs has started, Mike. So what was your reaction to that? Were you stunned to see Alabama get left off? Because I still see Alabama better than multiple teams in the playoffs. I know that the system doesn't work like that, but at the same time, it's tough to leave a team like Alabama out of the playoff no matter what when it comes to college football. What would you say?
It didn't surprise me. At halftime of the SMU-Clemson game, the group I was with, I told them Alabama has punched their ticket in the top 12. But how SMU finished that game is the last thought in your mind. And so as close as it was, I just had a gut feeling SMU was going to get that 12th team. But to be honest with you, doesn't South Carolina have a legit also argument for this? Man, listen, they were the hottest team in the SEC down the stretch. You didn't want to see them on the schedule. How they lost to LSU is still baffling to me because they had a big lead and just kind of whizzed it away real quickly. Man, South Carolina is a really good team, and Ole Miss. But, okay, you can't lose to Kentucky on your own home turf. For Alabama, you can't lose to an average Oklahoma team and lose to Vanderbilt. You can't. And I think somewhere down the line, they're going to have to redo this, and strength of schedule has to be a major part of the decision. Right now, it's really not. But I think you're going to have to work that into the equation eventually. You would have had a fourth team. But you know what my argument would have been? Who do you not want to play in the SEC this week if you had to play them? That's not in the playoffs. My answer question would be South Carolina. More than anybody. Yeah. Ole Miss is the best defensive team I've seen at Ole Miss in 20 years. But offensively, they were a bit of a disappointment this year. It was hit and miss. But, listen, no matter what, I think SMU deserves to be in there. I'm a big SEC guy. The way the rules are set today, they should have got in. Now, you're going to have to tweak those rules eventually. And we're going to go to 16 teams. Okay, that's right around the horizon. Because of TV, they're going to see the ratings and everything with this. We're going to go to 16, but there'll still be debate. Even if you got Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, somebody else got to squawk about it too. You know who's got, I think, a path that you could see get them into the Final Four, and they lost Saturday? Penn State. Because of who they play the first week, and if they win there, they play Boise State. Penn State's got a shot here. That's a talented football team that lost to Oregon. Now, James Franklin's got to win big games. He's got to be able to do that, and he's struggled with that at Penn State so far. But, man, if you're looking for a dark horse, so to speak, to get there, I'd lay a few nickels on Penn State.
That's a great bet, Mike. And you make a great point. At first, I was going to tell you right away, it's like there's no way, there's not a snowball's chance in hell because Franklin doesn't win big games, Mike. But you know what? You make a great argument. You do. SMU, a winnable game for Penn State. Boise State, 100% a winnable game for Penn State. But you know what? It all comes crumbling down against Penn State whenever they reach the next game, which is either going to be Georgia, in my opinion, or Notre Dame. I don't think they beat either of those teams, Mike.
It would be an upset, but in watching them, even in a loss, I was impressed that they got in the ring with the number one team in the country, and they traded blow for blow. They were really good in that football game. They've got some weapons there that's outstanding on offense. They play really good defense. Oregon's got a track team at wide receiver. Man, they would have a good 4x400 meter relay, the squad there. And Dylan Gabriel, I think he's perfect fit for Oregon. Now, Oregon has shown teams that get a little physical with them and run the ball, they have some success. But you're right. Franklin's got to be able to win that. But there is a path there for him that's easier than any other team, to be honest with you. Look at Oregon. They get the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee. Man, that's tough.
Tough game.
You're a number one seed. Yeah, the thing with Georgia's going to be, you've got a couple weeks now to get your backup quarterback ready. He brings a dimension that, okay, Carson Beck, he was hot and cold this year. I really liked him going into the season, but he's been so erratic. When he's been good, he's been really good. When he's been bad, he's been really bad. Now you've got a totally different style quarterback that can move around the pocket and get you some yardage running the ball. He doesn't throw the ball as well as Beck, but he runs with it extremely well. I think the same question may be asked in Austin, Texas. How far is Quinn Ewers going to take us here? He's basically a pocket quarterback. And I look at these games and those quarterbacks, the guys that can move around have success. That's not Quinn. And I thought he was pedestrian at best against Georgia. Pedestrian. And I thought at the end of the third quarter, you know what? They're going to give Arch an opportunity to play. Did not happen. And do basically what happened with Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa. Make the decision in the second half of a game.
Wow. We could see it. You're right. And that's a great example that you set with those recent quarterbacks that have came in and changed everything around. It's exciting. I love this playoff format, Mike. I do. I think it's more exciting than the bowl format. It gives us so much more to talk about. It gives us so many more different scenarios and predictions and excitement around the sport of college football. It's fantastic. And before we know it, it's going to go to 16 teams, and it's going to be even better, Mike. Hold on. I got to get some Saints stuff for you, but we're going to be right back with Mike Detillier right around the corner on Sirius XM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks.
The boys of summer become the champions of fall.
The World Series is on its way.
And SportsGrid brings you every angle. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Do you use the expensive blue or yellow pills to charge your sex life? Are you thinking about it? What if we can promise you the same results for less than $3 a pill? If you're paying $20 a pill for the other pills, you're getting taken to the cleaners. Our pills deliver the exact same results for less than $3. You'll save more than $16 a pill for the same results. And right now, radio callers will get 44 blue or yellow pills for $120 with free discreet shipping. You can save more than $700 off pharmacy prices. Charge your sex life now and save a ton of money. Call now and get your 44 pills and save over $700 and qualify for free shipping. Stop overpaying and call right now.
Paid for by Steelman Pills. 800-823-3851. 800-823-3851. 800-823-3851. That's 800-823-3851.
Carver and Lisi.
You have Ohio State that brought the best players, had Chip Kelly and a gutless Ryan Day, and Ohio State went into the playoffs yet again. I mean, give me a break. How do you have that team as a 5th overall? They lost as a 20.5-point favorite at home to a team that was averaging 10 points a game. It's a joke.
It's Carver and Lisi with Mike Carver and Joe Lisi. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific. On the SportsGrid Radio Network. The new SportsGrid app is now available on iOS and the App Store. Experience the ultimate sports betting companion that provides personalized content from your favorite hosts. In-depth matchup previews, game and prop picks, live odds, stats, scores, and more. All in one place. And of course, on the SportsGrid app, you can tune into our live television and radio coverage anytime. On the go, wherever you are. Download the SportsGrid app on the iOS App Store now. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Get sports gaming strategies and information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Everything you need to get the winning edge.
Right here.
All the time.
No wonder the wife says you never listen to her.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
talking with Mike Detillier from WWL 870 in Louisiana, also with the SaintsReport.com. We are mobbing through this show right now. So many different scenarios with college football, but I promised you guys we were going to get some Saints talk in here, considering they've been winning and winning and winning, but now they just lost Derek Carr to a fractured left wrist, and also the Rizzler has taken over in New Orleans. You know, Dennis Allen has been out, and they've been winning ever since, but the schedule doesn't get any easier for the Saints going forward. And, you know, no Chris Olave. What the Saints have been doing lately, also without Taysom Hill, has been pretty cool. It's been pretty strong. Have they had the toughest of opponents? No, they just beat the New York Giants. Big deal. But what do you think about this rebound and the Saints? Also, the NFC South has just been crazy. The Buccaneers have been winning all these games in a row. The Atlanta Falcons, my Atlanta Falcons, has lost, man, since my birthday, November 1st. They beat the Cowboys, and they haven't beat anybody since. The Carolina Panthers might be better than the freaking Atlanta Falcons right now, Mike. It's absurd. What's your take on the South right now? What's your take on the Saints and interim coach, the Rizzler?
I picked the Bucs to win this division before the season started. About a month ago, my producer tells me, well, Mike, you threw your saddle on a bad horse, like you always tell me. Well, all of a sudden, you know, because Atlanta looked as though they were going to ride it through. Tampa's made that run. I give a lot of credit to Baker Mayfield. That offense has kept them rolling. Getting Mike Evans back was a huge plus for them. Defensively, you can see they're not as good as in years past, and now you're going to have to play a few games without Antoine Winfield. But I think they win the South. Atlanta's in free fall. I did not see it happening this way. I knew their defense was a below-average group. I didn't think it was this bad. And now Kirk Cousins in a real slump for 4 weeks. Man, you know, I thought he could do a good job because they have the guys there, you know, with Drake London and with Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. But it has not worked, and they've changed philosophy. They were a run-heavy team. Now they've gone to a pass-heavy team. My thing is that offensive line was built to run the ball more, and I think it's exposed them. They were above average pass protection, but they were really good run blockers. It changed, I think, the whole mindset of the Falcons when they made that switch and Zach Robinson decides he's going to throw the ball all over. You know, to be honest with you. So I think Atlanta's going to have real troubles down the stretch. You know, with the Saints, they needed somebody who can give them oomph. And Darren has been able to do that. Coach Rizzi, and he's a live wire, no insulation. And you're going to get the full-fledged version of him. They'll get tests over the next 3 weeks in 2 games. They should beat the Raiders. But now they play the Commanders with Jaden Daniels coming back to Louisiana. And then Christmas week, you catch the Packers over there. That would be a major upset if you won any of those 2 games for the Saints. They're so limited on offense. Without Rashid Shaheed at wide receiver, without Chris Olave, you lose Taysom Hill. Now Derek Carr's down. Who knows for how long? Defensively, they can't stop the run. I'm shocked the Giants didn't try to run the football on them. Everybody else has. But Darren has put a lot of, I think, confidence back into this team. They do have a few players. They don't have enough really good players, and injuries have really been devastating to the Saints almost from the 3rd game on.
You're right. No, it has. That's football. That's NFL football for you. I think it's stunning how Coach Rizzler has actually turned this season around and made this team play hard-nosed football every single down. You know, that's what the NFL is all about. If you play every snap like it's your last snap, you might not win every game, Mike, based on talent, but you'll be competing in every single game, and you'll give your chance the ability to possibly win the game in the 4th quarter. But the Saints have been believing ever since that game. That game against the Falcons gave the Saints a sense of belief, and it just showed them a formula, in my opinion, that if you play this style of football, you might be able to win some games. I love talking football with you, Mike. You're a bundle of joy every single time we get to talk. You have so much knowledge. You're a football savant, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on Carver and Lisi on this day, man. It's always a pleasure to have you on. That's, again, Mike Detillier from WWL 870 in Louisiana, and also the SaintsReport.com. Guys, you can follow Mike on Twitter, on X, at Mike Detillier for all your latest football updates, SEC updates, NFL updates, and great stories from the world of football. Thanks again, Mr. Mike Detillier. It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Fall is here. It's getting cooler. Football and the World Series are coming in. Life is good. SportsGrid makes it better. Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Chinese researchers have created a robot that can identify plants just by touching them. Mimicking the delicate touch of human skin, identifying plant species with 97% accuracy, sensing moisture and texture machine vision can't see.
That's a very practice.
The goal? An army of robot farm workers tirelessly monitoring, fertilizing, and applying pesticide to individual plants 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, increasing crop yields. Even identifying dangerous plant species.
That would be poison ivy.
Follow me at G. Capalbo on X, and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Carver and Lisi.
I think
I'll tell you
Howard
why.
stinks.
I said, who told you Will Howard was overrated?
I know, you said it all summer when we were getting ready for this. Of all the money that they had to spend,
got this guy.
Was he the guy?
I don't know.
He stinks. He's got like 6 NFL wide receivers on the team, and he can't throw to any of them.
It's Carver and Lisi with Mike Carver and Joe Lisi. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific, on the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Grady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
You're listening to where real winners go for actionable insights and expert perspectives on daily sporting events.
7 days a week.
It's not a secret or anything.
I mean, we have a promotion budget for Pete's sake.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Carver and Lisi, hour numero dos, hour number 2. We are rolling on Sirius XM channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks. We've been having a grand old time. We talked to Jamie Eisenberg from CBS Sports in hour number 1, talk some fantasy football, get you ready for fantasy football weekend. And then we went to Mike Detillier at WWL 870 in Louisiana. But now it's time for hour number 2, for my bread and butter, baby, to get into the octagon, to get the gloves on, to get ready to hit somebody in the face. I'm ready to hit somebody in the face because of what happened to Alexander Volkov at UFC 310 this past weekend, and I had to get you guys a badass guest, a guy with personality, a guy with some pizzazz, a guy who's not afraid to jump into the octagon with no gloves on and fight bare knuckle and go national with it. And that's my friend Ben the Bane Davis, play-by-play commentator for UFC Fight Pass, on-air talent for DAZN Boxing, Misfits Boxing, and my favorite one, the Bowling Network, baby, Sumo, you name it, it's play-by-play Ben Davis. You can find him on Twitter, on X, at Ben the Bane Davis. What's up, Ben? Welcome back to the show, but this time it's Carver and Lisi, my friend. Welcome.
Let's go. We're switching it up a little bit, but same Bane, same name. My man, it's always good to be back here with you.
Oh, I needed to get a badass personality. I needed somebody to find my tempo and my energy, especially after what happened at UFC 310 this past weekend. I'm still spitting blood. I'm still pissed off about Alexander Volkov. I had him as a plus dog at plus 270. I think he beat the crap out of Cyril Gane for about, 12 minutes out of the 15 minutes they were allowed to fight. And for somehow, some way, Alexander Volkov loses a decision. Ben, I went on Twitter the next day, and I was serious about this. I literally wrote, I don't think I can bet MMA seriously until something changes with the judges, because it's not worth it. It's not worth for guys on the side who don't know what they're watching to take my money away. But that's how I'm going to start off with you. What the hell did you think of UFC 310? What the hell did you think of Alexander Volkov getting robbed by Cyril Gane and Dana White telling him, you got effed?
Yeah. I mean, let's start off angry. It was a complete sham. I don't understand why you have individuals that are really floundering boxing judges coming over to mixed martial arts and toxicifying our pool. Like, this is ridiculous. Alexander Volkov outstrikes Cyril Gane by almost 60 different punches and kicks, had way more control on the ground, in my opinion, was way more effective in nearly every single exchange, yet, finds himself on the wrong side of the scorecards. I don't understand it. I can't grasp this. And we look at several other decisions that night, and you just kind of have to question. You just cross your arms and question. That's all you can do, right? Look at Battle and Brown. I thought that Randy Brown thought Rude Boy had it. Unfortunately, it goes the other way, and there's a lot of people that disagree. But that's, like you said, the nature of this sport right now, and I just don't think we have options to change it, right? How do you change this? I'm just not sure if you can. The athletic commissions have all that leveraging power, and they don't seem interested in rectifying this shitty judging that we get.
You're right. No, you're 100% right, man. And I still have the wind knocked out of me. I really do. I started celebrating a little prematurely. I was on my baby moon with my wife. I'm watching the fights on my phone. I'm feeling revved up. Everything's going perfect. And then they give the wrong decision. I almost threw up. I didn't want to bet any more of the fights. I found it to be somewhat of a robbery in my spirit.
Yeah.
So it just really put a damper on it. And it gives it a damper going forward, wanting to bet fights. If I don't think somebody's going to go get knocked out, or if I'm not going to put some minus 300 guys in a parlay, no doubt about it type of plays, I'll mess around with that. But when it comes to these tight type of fights, when you saw Alexander Volkov and Cyril Gane on paper, especially because it's like a rematch, you knew it was going to be a tough fight, and it was going to be a tight fight just because of the way that Volkov has been fighting lately. I think he's improved dramatically, and he just keeps getting better. I thought that fight was going to be one for Volkov. I thought he was better everywhere as long as he could defend the takedown. And that's exactly what he did. So to see him get robbed like that was just like, it makes me question going forward, to bet big fights. And those are the types of fights you want to bet. You know what I mean? You want to bet the big type of fights where you don't know who's going to win. But when you get robbed by decisions, it kind of makes you reluctant on throwing down some money, right? You don't want to get robbed because then it ruins a night. It ruins a night.
Absolutely. Absolutely it does. And I want to add that the first time we got Gane versus Volkov, they had 10 extra minutes, right? Without those 2 rounds, that full 25-minute affair, it did look quite different. And, I think that certainly played a factor. But I want to highlight something that annoyed me about UFC 310, and it's the fact that Crone Gracie and Bryce Mitchell appeared on the main card, yet Aljamain Sterling, one of the consensus greatest bantamweights of all time, now top 10 featherweight, taking on Movsar Evloev, this undefeated top 5 phenom. That's stacked away on the prelims? This doesn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me before, and then certainly after, where we got what was a pretty entertaining grappling match between Movsar and Aljo. I thought that was really excellent, high-level grappling. And then you get to Crone Gracie pulling guard 8 times and then getting knocked out by 20 elbows to the chin, and you just sit back and go, wow. Which one was pay-per-view worthy? Which one wasn't? Which one should I have paid $90 for? And which one should have been served up for free? I think I know the answer. What was your answer on that one?
I've been bitching about that since I saw the card.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I couldn't believe it. Like, why would you put Crone Gracie on the main card? What have we seen from Crone Gracie since he got into the UFC? His first fight, who was it against? Bruce Leroy, I'm pretty sure. He submitted Bruce Leroy, right, in his first fight. And I'm like, okay, wow, like this. But even still, yet I wasn't impressed when he fought Leroy. I thought we were going to see like a great version of this Kron Gracie. It's the same guy. It's the same guy every single time. And sometimes I question it, Ben, because, you know, if you're the UFC, I think you understand that a lot of guys are going to be watching the free prelims, and a lot of people aren't going to buy the fights because they don't want to spend the money. So how do I get the consumer to watch these free fights and make them pay for the next UFC card? I think that's sometimes the reasoning behind it. It's not about the fan like you or me that says, why am I paying $80 or $70 for Kron Gracie? I think they're just trying to get more fans, and by doing that is by putting more badass fights for free. You know what I mean? You put it for free so you get an outside voice, an outside viewer to fall in love with the sport.
Now, it's not that I don't grasp that at all, right? The financial side of things I've got a good finger on the pulse of, but I just try and opt to look at things from a sporting perspective. And if you try and analyze it through that lens, you get Kron Gracie, who was on a 2-fight losing streak coming into this, and Bryce Mitchell, who had been flatlined by Josh Emmett and then took a year on the shelf. So for me, I look at it and go, why are two guys who aren't really on tears, aren't really in high-stakes positions within their divisions, placed on this main card and this platform and spotlight? I truly believe that, yes, the financial side of things is one thing, but from both a integrity of the sports side and a business side, Aljo versus Evloev should have been on that main card. I think it drew more interest. It would have maybe moved the needle for some people to pay if they weren't considering it. They'd go, hey, we've got one of the greatest. Yeah, exactly.
You were talking about a former champion here, and that's exactly what it was. People are like, oh, nobody wants to watch a wrestling versus a grappling match. Well, if there's two top elite level grapplers and wrestlers fighting each other, I do want to see that. I don't want to see an elite level grappler and elite level wrestler facing a guy who just strikes, because that means we're going to see a fight on the ground where the guy on the bottom doesn't know how to get back up. And nobody wants to see that for 15 minutes. Pure domination. That's usually what we get with some guys. It's like, could they pass the takedown test? Let me see. But this time around, it was like an all-star match. It was an all-star grappling match and wrestling match. It was unlike things that we see constantly with the UFC. This was a special treat, and you're right. That should have been on the main card. I got about 30 seconds left in this segment. Hold on before we get on to the next segment. One quick take for you. Was Kai Asakura worth a main event spot? You have 20 seconds to give me this one until we come back with you.
So 20 seconds to answer this one. I'll give you 1 second answer. Sure. Why not?
Sure, why not? We're going to be back right after this with Ben Davis. Another quick segment with Ben. We're going to jump into UFC Tampa. This is Carver and Lisi on SiriusXM Channel 159. I want a little bit more from Ben about Kai Asakura after the break. Stay tuned. This is Carver and Lisi.
Time to coil up that garden hose.
And SportsGrid has you covered with strategies and info on football, baseball, and everything else. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. Sports Rage Tonight.
People criticize Winston when he was at Tampa. Like, he led the league in touchdown passes one year, and he threw a lot of interceptions. Very Ryan Fitzpatrick-like. Ryan Fitzpatrick used to, give you 2-3 touchdown passes in a game. He's going to fumble it. He's going to throw a pick. But at least you get something. What does Kirk Cousins give you right now? He doesn't give you field goals. He just gives you interceptions.
It's Sports Rage Tonight with Gabe Morency. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. On the SportsGrid Radio Network. The new SportsGrid app is now available on iOS and the App Store. Experience the ultimate sports betting companion that provides personalized content from your favorite hosts. In-depth matchup previews, game and prop picks, live odds, stats, scores, and more. All in one place. And of course, on the SportsGrid app, you can tune into our live television and radio coverage anytime. On the go, wherever you are. Download the SportsGrid app on the iOS App Store now. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Know someone with a drinking or drug problem? Learn how to get sober after we share these stories.
I was 35 with 2 beautiful children when my life and addiction started to spiral out of control. After my divorce, I went into a depression cycle and started drinking more often and using prescription drugs. After my second DWI and arrest, my ex-husband threatened to take our children away from me.
I was 17 when I became addicted to heroin and meth. I thought I could quit on my own, but I couldn't. It hit me when I was arrested.
Get sober now. Your private insurance may cover costs and we'll get you here. It's simple. Just call Elite Rehab Placement right now. Please don't wait. Your life matters to us.
800-959-6348. 800-959-6348. 800-959-6348. Call right now before it's too late. That's 800-959-6348.
Days are getting cooler.
The shadows are getting longer.
You know what that means? It's football weather. So bundle up and keep it here for all the latest strategies and gridiron information.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
We are back on SiriusXM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Network. This is Carver and Lisi. I am Matthias Burbell, your host for the day, and we are talking to Ben the Bane Davis. My man, he fights, he talks, UFC play-by-play, and we're rolling. Let's get back into this. We were talking about Kaya Sakura right before we went to the break. I asked you if he deserved the main event spot. I thought it was a little underwhelming. I thought he almost connected the knee in the first round, came so close, oh so close, but then Pantoja just let it all go in the second round. He feared nothing after the first 3 minutes. He knew he had the fight in the bag. I just wonder where this Kaya Sakura could land, after 5 more fights in the UFC.
Yeah, that's the big question, is the future, right? I think that for this fight, for Kaya Sakura, he was heavily against the odds, and Alexandre Pantoja displayed that beautifully with the skills that he possesses. But let's not think that this was completely out of nowhere undeserved. Pantoja is 9-0 against the top 10 at 125. So when you're thinking about a division and stakes and who's the next guy up, when you cut Makayev, you don't really have anybody, right? So I love the idea of Kaya Sakura coming in and getting the shot. I love the idea of Steve Erceg getting fast-tracked to the shot because Pantoja has simply been that dominant. And for Kai, back-to-back stoppage victories coming into this, with his most recent being that second-round TKO over Juan Archuleta, who's a very talented and tenured combat sports product. I like to see it. What does this kid have? What's he going to bring? Because it's not about that fight. It's about what he does next for Kaya Sakura. Now he's in the top 15 of 125. How can this cat mix it up? And will we see him maybe ascend to the title again? A lot of questions for one Mr. Asakura to answer.
He's an exciting fighter. I like the energy that he brought to the fight week. Honestly, I picked him because of his energy. I don't like to pick guys because of their face-offs and their energy, but there's something that he brought to the octagon for a UFC debut, for a newcomer that I haven't really seen, man. I thought he looked confident, and why wouldn't he be confident? He's a former champion in Ryzen. The guy's ecstatic. He fights in big arenas, stacked arenas. The Asian population loves MMA and fighting, so the guy has that it factor, but I saw that wear off after the first couple minutes, and you could tell when he went back to the stool after round 1. What was his training partner telling him in his ear? Believe in yourself. When he was telling Kaya Sakura to believe in himself during the break after round 1, I knew the fight was over. You know why? Because his teammates knew the fight was over. When you're telling your guy that you got to believe in yourself after round 1, the fight is over, Ben. That's some round 4 type shit. It's some round 4, like you're bleeding out of your nose, your eyes, your ears. You want to wave the white flag, and you're trying to tell somebody you got to keep it going. That's some Leon Rocky Edwards type stuff. You got to give it everything you got, Rocky. You got to give it everything you got, Leon, or you're going to be done, son. And then he knocks out Kamaru Usman. That's what I saw. You don't see that after round 1, right?
No, yeah, you certainly don't want your UFC corner trying to encourage you on and bring life back into you after just 5 minutes, right? You would hope that his mental fortitude would have been there and stayed present, but it wasn't, And again, that's why I say there's just questions for him to answer moving forward. Will we see a renewed toughness internally and some more mental strength in his sophomore outing within the Ultimate Fighting Championship? I'm unsure. But if I'm in the top 15 and I'm seeing that fight, I'm calling for Kai next. I wish that a lot more of these top 15 flyweight dogs went, give me Asakura. Let me test him next, because the best opportunity for anybody else at flyweight is Kai.
Well, it's tough for the top-ranking flyweights to ask for that fight because he got put at number 14, if I'm not mistaken. So he's at the bottom of the ladder right now. He's still ranked, which is a big fight. But if you're Steve Erceg, I love the name. Steve Erceg is one of my new favorite flyweights. I think he's exciting. I thought he came so close to beating Pantoja when they fought. It was an extremely great fight. So close, right? But hey, it didn't go his way. Why do you think, Ben, that number 7 guy or number 8 guy would want to call out a number 14 guy, Kaya Sakura, besides the point that he just fought for the belt?
So I think the reason why Steve Erceg might leap at this opportunity and some of the other guys inside the top 15 is because of the nature of flyweight. It's the one division in the UFC where you really don't know what the brass are going to do next in terms of the title fight. Because Pantoja has beaten Royval, 3 times, beaten Moreno 2 times. He has these existing victories, right? So I think that for Steve Erceg, bouncing on the former, most recent title challenger and taking him out in impressive fashion could do more than sitting on the sidelines and trying to play the game like you see in other divisions. Flyweight's the Wild West. That's why I like it so much.
You make a great point, bro. That's why I love having you on. That's a great point. You're right. I'm literally listening to you, and I'm just kind of like, damn, Ben's right. Like, you're 100%. That division is so up in the air. It's like, maybe you're a great knockout away from possibly fighting for the title shot, just like Steve Erceg. You gave a great example. Steve Erceg, it's like, what the hell? Steve Erceg is fighting for the title? And what do you know? He almost won it. And he wasn't supposed to.
So it'd be weird for Steve. It'd be weird for him to then turn around and have this entitlement and go, oh, I'm too good for 14. It's like, Steve, you got fast-tracked to the title, right? You understand how this division works. You're not going to be the guy that then draws lines in the sand. No, I think that this new age of flyweights understand it's about moments. Doesn't matter where or against who, it's about moments. For Erceg, it was that left hook against Matt Schnell. Then, boom, bada bing, you get a title shot. So I think that if anyone understands that, it should be Erceg. So we'll see.
Great points. Great points made by Ben the Bane Davis. You are listening to Carver and Lisi on Sirius XM channel 159. We are rolling with Ben the Bane Davis, play-by-play commentator on UFC Fight Pass, on-air talent for DAZN Boxing, Misfit Boxing, play-by-play for bowling, Sumo TV, all of it for Ben. I love saying the sumo part when I give your introduction. I swear to God, it's the best. But yeah, Ben, the co-main event, Ian Gary against Shavkat Rakhmonov, one of the biggest underdogs on the card. Ian Gary, crazy that we're saying that because of how talented the kid is. But man, he came close. He was stuffing a takedown away from winning that fight. When Shavkat went for that double leg in round 4 and he got that takedown, he won the fight, which sucked because Gary was the better fighter in my opinion. He was the more dangerous fighter in my opinion, and he was very close to saying he deserves to win the fight. If you're Bilal Muhammad, you're not that nervous anymore.
Yeah, Bilal beats both. I mean, let's get that out of the way right now. Bilal Muhammad makes some nice work of both Shavkat and Ian Gary, but I do want to end with this on the co-main event of UFC 310. There are wins within losses, and Ian Gary had as much of a victory in that defeat as you could possibly have in losing your undefeated record, and I think he recognizes that. That's been his whole narrative since is, when you looked at it, he was the one that was more dangerous. They like to talk about Shavkat submitting him in sparring, but who had the rear naked choke locked in during the fight? It was Ian Gary. So the one thing that I got to say is I can't wait for these guys to run it back because I need a second serving.
Woo! Let's go. We are rolling with Ben the Bane Davis. We will be back right after this. UFC Tampa predictions, lines, all on this. Carver and Lisi, Sirius XM channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks. Stay tuned.
Is coming. Don't look like an idiot at work. Know your stuff. Football and everything else. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channel dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
And now let's go to the big game of the year. Up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
1939, the National Football League Championship at the Dairy Bowl in Wisconsin. The Green Bay Packers shut out the New York Giants 27-0.
Len Bonham's long pass was intercepted by Svensson for the Packers, and Giant hoped to shatter.
For Green Bay, it was their 5th championship in the last 10 years. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast.
Do you think that Bruce Pearl will drop dead coaching basketball? So I'm watching this guy coach last night, and he was purple. I mean, my man turns purple when he's coaching, and he's sweating like Fred Flintstone. And I'm like, I think he's going to drop dead coaching, which is probably where he wants to go, wouldn't you think?
It's Pharrell, Coast to Coast with Scott Farrell. Weekdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. On the home of the winning edge, the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Days are getting cooler
and shadows are getting longer.
You know what that means.
It's football weather. So bundle up and keep it here for all the latest strategies and gridiron information.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Carver and Lisi on Sirius XM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks. We are talking to Ben the Bane Davis. We've been blasting through these segments with Ben. I'm not going to lie. I was only supposed to keep for 2, but we haven't even got to the best part, which are the picks for this coming weekend. I know that everybody here wants picks, so let's start giving out our best bets, our best picks for UFC Tampa. It's a pretty fun card. Colby Covington gets back in the octagon in Florida, whereas he supposedly owns Florida. We'll see about that. Plus 220 against Joaquin Buckley. Also, Cub Swanson plus 130 taking on Billy Quarantillo. Another juicy line. Adrian Yanez at plus 145 against Daniel Marcos. And how about this one? Jakar Close at plus 315 against Joe Alvarez. That's a scary fight there, bro. What do you think, Ben? What are you looking forward for UFC Tampa?
So Billy Quarantillo is a good friend of mine. Him and I extend back several years, and anytime he fights, I get the most anxiety in any UFC fight of all time. Watching him fight is very stress-inducing for me. And now he's taking on a legend in Cub Swanson. I mean, come on. California zone. I love it. And for Billy, this is I don't want to say must-win scenario, but he's a guy that's been alternating wins and losses since his win over Kyle Nelson in September of 2020. So for Billy, I think it's very deeply important after that rear naked choke setback, the first time he's been submitted in his career, to bounce back in a big way. And who better than a true legend in Cub Swanson? I've got Quarantillo by decision. I think that he's going to have a bit of a grappling upside here. I think his strength and conditioning is going to look a lot better than his last fight. There was a lot that was going on in his life at that point, and I just don't think it was reflective of the best Billy Q. Whereas in UFC Tampa, in his hometown, he's going to get it done. Or hometown, rather, where he lives. Either way, I got BQ. Now let's talk about this main event, because I'm going to absorb a little bit of time yapping about Colby Covington. So I've been critical of Mr. Covington for many years. If you look at his defense over Robbie Lawler way back in 2018 or 2019, since then he's only beaten Jorge Masvidal and Tyron Woodley, 2 guys who are no longer on the roster, and wins that have aged ridiculously poorly. So within the last 5 years, Covington has done very little within the sport of mixed martial arts successfully. Yes, he's gone out there 3 times and lost for the undisputed UFC welterweight title, but in the most recent one that was very undeserved, he gave the worst title-winning effort I've ever seen. Colby Covington against Leon Edwards looked terrible. And now that he's been on the sidelines, and I know that he gave the excuse about his foot being broken, I just think jumping in short notice against a monster in Joaquin Buckley is a cash grab. This is a money move. Covington knows that at 36, his time is limited, and this might be the best opportunity to squeeze the most pennies out of his remaining contract. Unfortunately, it's going to come at the expense of his consciousness. Buckley by KO, it's written in the stars. That's all that is going to be happening on Saturday night.
Oh, man. We've been waiting for a long time to see Colby Covington get his lights knocked out. You know, Colby Covington's personality annoys me, obviously. He says the dumbest things for attention, and he gets people's attention, and he makes people pissed off. But if there's anything I could say positive about Colby Covington, is the guy's tough. You know, when he fought Usman, he was finished, but, man, he was tough in that fight. Is there any way we see that, Colby?
I just think this is going to be a weak performance from him. I think this is short notice. I think he's going to be looking his age in this fight. And again, stylistically, it's not a great one for him. You know, Buckley is a guy that was mixing it up with the monsters of middleweight. We're so 185ers that were trying to ground and pound Mr. Joaquin. And so for me, New Mansa at welterweight is such an exciting prospect because he no longer has to worry about these bigger, stronger guys. And Covington being an undersized welterweight, I mean, this cat should be maybe at 155 if he was in his prime. That's what I would suggest. Is not going to be able to enforce much grappling on a guy like Buck. So, you know, the question for me is, can Covington avoid the haymakers, the Hail Mary type shots that Buckley throws so frequently? And at his advanced age, I just don't believe that he'll possess the defensive awareness. So, you know, it's a hard one for Covington to walk back into and win, even if he had a full camp. But the fact that it's short notice, I mean, come on, give me Buckley by KO. I want it.
No, let's do it. I think I'm dancing with you right there, Ben Davis. All right, last question for you, a quick one for you on your way out. This game is called Pick Your Best Dog. Miles John plus 215 over Felipe Lima. Drakkar Klose at plus 315 over Joe Alvarez. Adrian Yanez at plus 145.
I kind of like Miles Johns in this position, right? I think that he's got a little bit of a reach disadvantage, but Miles throws power, and Felipe Lima, unless I'm misremembering, has been tagged at some times before. So while it's a bit early on the prelims, you know, give me that Miles Johns action.
Let's go, baby. Miles John at plus 215 over Felipe Lima at minus 265. It's in the prelims, and you're right. Hey, Ben, it's always a pleasure to have you on, man. I can't wait to have you on again. Either it's on this show, Hit the Bell, whatever, on Sirius XM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks. I appreciate you coming on, my friend.
Hey, whenever you ask, I'll be there, baby. All day.
Loser is kind of a mean-spirited slur.
But it doesn't have to stick.
Tell them to listen to SportsGrid and fix it.
No, thank you. Later.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The new SportsGrid app is now available on iOS and the App Store. Experience the ultimate sports betting companion that provides personalized content from your favorite hosts. In-depth matchup previews, game and prop picks, live odds, stats, scores, and more. All in one place. And of course, on the SportsGrid app, you can tune into our live television and radio coverage anytime. On the go, wherever you are. Download the SportsGrid app on the iOS App Store now. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
If you turned 65 recently like me, it's important you find a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you the coverage you're looking for. But finding one can be difficult. The best thing I did, and I suggest you do the same, is call a licensed insurance agent and let them walk you through your Medicare Advantage plan options. There are so many benefits you have access to, so make the call now and let the representatives explain everything to you. Our licensed insurance agents can offer you a variety of Medicare Advantage plans. Plus, the call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation to enroll. We're here to make it easy for you to select a Medicare Advantage plan that may work for your needs. Finding a Medicare Advantage plan can be easy if you do what I did. Make a quick call right now to learn more. Thank you.
800-365-6303. 800-365-6303. 800-365-6303. That's 800-365-6303.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast.
Do you think that Bruce Pearl will drop dead coaching basketball? So I'm watching this guy coach last night, and he was purple. I mean, my man turns purple when he's coaching, and he's sweating like Fred Flintstone. And I'm like, I think he's going to drop dead coaching, which is probably where he wants to go, wouldn't you think?
It's Pharrell, Coast to Coast with Scott Farrell. Weekdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. On the home of the winning edge, the SportsGrid Radio Network.
No way football is played in the fall and winter.
Because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Hello and welcome back to Carver and Lisi on Sirius XM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks. We are rolling on this episode today, and it's a fun day, man. We started with Mike Detillier TheSaintsReport.com, WWL 870 in Louisiana, chatting some LSU football, college football playoff scenarios, football. And we're going to keep the momentum going because now I got one of the best reporters in the country, Daryl Orlando Ledbetter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Man, Daryl, how long have you been covering the Falcons for? Daryl, what is this, your 20th year, your 21st year? I lose track. You've been covering this team almost as long as I've been alive. It's been crazy. How are you, Daryl?
Oh, I'm doing great, Matthias. This is my 20th season here on the Falcons beat. My first game was in the playoffs against the Rams there back in the Jim Mora era, and they were on their way to the NFC Championship game in Philly. So been here for a lot of Falcons football, a lot of highs and some lows.
Yeah, but you always cover the team to perfection, Daryl. That's why I love you. Every single time before the season starts, I give you a call and I ask you what's happening with this Falcons team. How are they doing? How are they producing? How's camp going? And you never, ever give me like, oh, everybody's doing great. Michael Penix is a superstar. Kirk Cousins has been throwing dimes. Drake London is the next Hall of Famer. You keep it real with me. And you told me from the get-go, Michael's not ready yet. Kirk's going to start. 2 years ago when Marcus Mariota was the quarterback, you told me right away it's going to be a terrible season. Marcus can't hit a guy if he was wide open on the beach. So, and you've been nailing it left and right. What's your take on this Falcons team right now, Daryl? Because, man, we are in absolute free fall if you're a Falcons fan. Losing to the Saints, losing to the Broncos, losing to the Chargers, having a bye week, losing to the Vikings, loss. And it seems like they can't get a win. They got the Raiders on Monday Night Football this week, and I don't even know if they're going to win this game, Daryl. What's happening with the Falcons? Are they in deep trouble?
Yes, they are, Mateus. It's been we got a big sample size of what this team is was going to be this year, and it's been a wide fluctuation. I mean, from beating the Eagles, playing the Chiefs tough, beating the Bucs twice, and now they've falling off the cliff to, where they can't even score in the red zone. They got a chance here to get it right over these last 4 games and even still make the playoffs. So you can't write them off because, that's when they might turn around and do something shocking and get to the playoffs.
It's not over till the fat lady sings, Daryl, and that's for damn sure. And I'm with you. This team needs a win. And if they can't get a win against this Raiders team on Monday Night Football, I don't think they're going to win another game this season, Daryl, which is sad to say. Who is to blame for this free fall right now? Is it on Raheem Morris? Is it on Kirk Cousins?
So when you're not scoring, taking field goals from the 2-yard line and the 11 like last week, it's going to be hard to win in the National Football League. The defense has been playing a lot better. And then, you got to spread some blame to Terry, got to spread some to Raheem and his new coordinators who've never called plays in the NFL until this year. They haven't adjusted the passing game to get people open. That's their fault. The defense is continuing to come, but they just got torched in the secondary last week. So while the pass rush is coming around, the coverage got worse. So that means the players aren't up to par. And you can go look at the drafts and see now Terry's got 4 drafts in here, and you can see that he hasn't been hitting on his players in the top 100 picks. His best pick might have been Tyler Algier in the 5th round. He's missed on Richie Grant, Troy Anderson. Those are a couple high picks that they needed to hit on, and they haven't. And then you got the Kyle Pitts situation where you could have took Penei Sewell. But, yeah, it's enough blame to spread around for everybody when you're 6-7 and have lost 4 games in a row in a year where you were thinking you could go to the playoffs and win the division.
Oh, man. The big question right now around this organization, I guess this week, I guess for fans as well, and for a person like me, who's wondering what's going to happen. I don't want to say I'm completely done with Kirk Cousins, but I kind of saw it last week after he threw that first interception against Minnesota, and this is just my own personal take and my own personal opinion on this. I saw his warrior spirit diminish. I said this last night on Carver and Lisi with Mike. I said that you could see it in his eyes. He doesn't have that same look that he had years prior where you make a mistake, you want to get back in there, and you want to fix your mistake. The look that Kirk Cousins had against Minnesota was, oh no, not again. It's mental. He doesn't have that fight in him. You could see it in his eyes, Mike. This isn't, we've been watching Kirk Cousins since he's been playing at Michigan State for crying out loud. And he's always been a warrior. He's always taken big hits and gotten back up. He's always gotten guys fired up after they made mistakes. Stay in the fight. Keep the fight going. I don't see that with Kirk Cousins right now. And why should we? They're in a free fall. So what are they waiting for to put in Penix? If they lose this weekend, the season is over. I'm so done with the Falcons telling me, oh, next year, oh, the process. We're throwing away years every single season. If it's for the process, we're going to end up losing Drake London when he's done with his rookie contract. And then we're going to go have to find another big-time wide receiver if you're the Falcons. So I'm just a little confused when it comes to this, Daryl. Is it time for Penix? I think the answer is yes. Look at Bo Nix. Bo Nix was, I don't want to say terrible his first couple games in the NFL season, but he definitely wasn't what he is today. The guy has experience. He's made better plays. He understands the game better. The game is starting to slow down for him. I think it's time to put in Penix. And if the Falcons don't make the playoffs, it's okay. At least he has a head start going into next season where aspirations will be higher than this year, considering the Falcons told everybody what their plan was, sitting Penix and starting Cousins. I think that experiment is over. There's 4 games left. It's time to start Penix or the season is over. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that when their season is mathematically over, I mean, we're still making a projection now because they are 1 game back with 4 to go, and the Bucks got to play the Chargers this week. So if you could win against the Raiders and they lose to the Chargers, then you're basically in a 1-game season scenario, and you got to beat the Giants and the Panthers, but you got to go to D.C. and beat the Commanders to finish tied with Tampa and go to playoffs. So until they're mathematically eliminated, I don't foresee a path to the field for Michael Penix, simply because we know that they haven't given him one play for a game plan all year long. His job has been to run the scout team, and I talked to him last week. I was like, "Hey, if you go out there, can you go execute the game plan?" He's like, "Yeah, I take mental reps in practice when Kurt is going through all the plays." So if they put him out there and the players know that he ain't practiced none of these plays, what does that do to the morale of your team? So their wagon hits to Kirk Cousins, and just say they fall off the cliff here, Mateus. Say they don't beat the Raiders and they lose to the Giants. Okay, now you're 6-9 and you're eliminated. It might be some backdoor way through the other wild card spot. I have to cover that and look at that. But once that's the case, then you go to D.C. and play Penix, and you come home and play him against Bryce Young in the season finale. You can't put him out there when he hasn't practiced a play or a game plan all year long, and the players know he's out there winging it. That's not going to work.
No, absolutely not, Daryl. And that's why I love having you on, sir, for this type of content, for that type of information. People are wondering why Penix isn't playing, and you just gave us the answer why, Daryl. That's why he's not playing. And I completely understand why he's not going to play now, because he has been throwing all these types of plays. You're not just going to throw him into a brush fire. Obviously, the Falcons don't think he's ready to play. We have been talking with Daryl Orlando Ledbetter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Daryl, I know we had a short time today, but that's all the time we have today, man. It was a pleasure having you on. I need to get this Falcon update and NFC South update for the fans, and now we know why Penix is not starting. I want to thank you for coming on Carver and Lisi on Sirius XM Channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Networks. And for all the fans out there, let me tell you where you can find Daryl on X. You can find him at TheOrlandoAJC. Thank you so much, Daryl. It's a pleasure having you on, sir.
Likewise, sir. Thanks for having me, Tiz. Take care and have a great evening.
Yeah, it's getting cooler.
Football weather is here.
Stay tuned for all the latest odds, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
And now let's go to the big game of the year. Up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
1939, the National Football League Championship at the Dairy Bowl in Wisconsin. The Green Bay Packers shut out the New York Giants 27-0.
Len Bonham's long pass was intercepted by Svensson for the Packers, and Giant hopes to shut it.
For Green Bay, it was their 5th championship in the last 10 years. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and SiriusXM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Moneyline at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Carver and Lisi.
You have Ohio State that brought the best players, had Chip Kelly and a gutless Ryan Day, and Ohio State went into the playoffs yet again. I mean, give me a break. How do you have that team as a 5th overall? They lost as a 20.5-point favorite at home to a team that was averaging 10 points a game. It's a joke.
It's Carver and Lisi with Mike Carver and Joe Lisi. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific, on the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Fall is almost here.
It's time to stow the lawnmower and get ready for all that glorious action coming your way. Stay tuned to SportsGrid for all the strategies, angles, and info you need to get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Carver and Lisi on SportsGrid Radio Networks on SiriusXM Channel 159. We are rolling, baby. We hit every single angle on this show today. College football, NFL, MMA, and now we go to college basketball. You know what I mean? We don't stop here on Carver and Lisi. I am Matthias Burbell, your host, and my guest right now is Chris Monter, editor-publisher of collegebasketballnews.com, Monter Draft News. This guy has been talking college basketball with me for quite some time, and I was pumped to have you on Carver and Lisi today, man. How have you been enjoying the beginning of college basketball this season? I think it's been fun, man. I think it's been exciting and unpredictable so far.
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, I'm like a lot of people who follow all the sports, and most college basketball fans don't normally get into it until maybe January, once college football and maybe even the NFL is over. But you're right. It's been exciting so far. We've seen some great teams, some movement in the rankings, especially this past week when Kansas, who was previously number one, lost twice in 1 week. So we have a new number one team, Tennessee, which is great for the Volunteers. And the SEC, of course, added Oklahoma and Texas this past year. Everybody thinks of the SEC, of course, as a football conference, but they have 9 teams currently ranked in the AP Top 25 and Big Ten, which of course added 4 teams, USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon. They have 6 teams ranked in that Top 25. So some of those teams that maybe you're used to are still in there, but some new teams, and I think that's what kind of makes it kind of fun. And again, I don't begrudge fans for not getting into basketball quite yet. To be honest, my interest sometimes changed a little just because of the transfer portal and the NIL. It's hard to follow these players. I was looking at the top 5 scorers. 2 of the top 5 scorers in the country are playing for their 3rd team in college basketball. So it's hard to really follow the teams. And obviously with college football, pro football taking so much of the, headlines, maybe people haven't gotten into it. But I think there's some good reasons for people to get into it pretty soon.
No, absolutely. I feel like the preseason tournaments, Thanksgiving, were really fun this season. I was paying attention to a bunch of teams, and I think the transfer portal has made it more interesting recently, especially this year. Like, I was tripping out when I was watching Kansas when they played Duke, and I was really getting into it. And I was shocked when I saw A.J. Storr playing for Kansas. He transferred from Wisconsin, had an excellent year at Wisconsin last year. Terrible NCAA tournament game, in my opinion. But then I saw him play against Duke, and I'm like, man, A.J. Storr he's playing against Duke, and I thought, man, A.J. Storr, what a great pickup for Kansas. And I'm starting to like this Kansas team a little bit. Hunter Dickinson staying there, playing some big minutes. He's an older man now. I remember when Hunter Dickinson went to Michigan. But what do you think of this Kansas team right now? Do you think they can make a deep run if they stay healthy? I think they have the pieces to make a deep run this year. I think they're an exciting bunch.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're a team, much like a lot of teams. I think guard play is so big. And that's really been a thing with Kansas. When they've had that good, consistent guard play, that's when they've really been at their best. I've known Bill Self forever. I knew him when he was at Oral Roberts. That shows you how long I've known him. So I always kind of pull for him. But again, they're a very talented team. You're right. Storr, to be honest, kind of got off to a little bit of a slow start. He's not even averaging double figures. But I think, once you get that chemistry, and again, you're looking at so many teams that are still trying to figure things out. And we see that in the NBA, of course, with so many teams making moves in the offseason, getting that chemistry. But I think they're going to be a team, as always, that's going to be in the mix. You're right. You have a great size with Hunter Dickinson, the former Michigan transfer, and then Storr, as you mentioned, started his career actually at St. John's, then Wisconsin. Now he's on his third team. But again, I think they're a team that can be very dangerous as they progress throughout the season. But again, I still think DeJuan Harris is going to be kind of the X factor. Again, as a point guard, can he be that floor general that they need? And if he can do that consistently, this is a team I think could definitely be, a Final Four, Elite Eight, and maybe even farther type team.
What do you think about Duke so far? What do you think about Cooper Flagg and the way that he started his season? He dropped 20 points against Louisville in his previous game, so he's starting to get a little loose. Do you think Cooper Flagg is without a doubt the number one pick going into next year's NBA draft?
Yeah, and I like the way that he's responded. You get so much coverage, and you kind of wonder, can they live up to the hype? But he has. He not only leads the team in scoring, rebounding, and assists, but blocks as well. So he's a well-rounded player. And they got a couple other young players that I really like as well that I think will be not only good players for Duke, but players we're going to watch for in the NBA. But you're right. Duke lost a heartbreaker in that Kansas game, but they bounced back. They knocked off Gonzaga in overtime thriller down 16 at halftime. Were able to rally. But you're right. Cooper Flagg, if you have to pick right now, you would argue worst case he's going to be number 2. I think most likely will be the number 1 pick in that 2025 NBA draft.
An interesting team that's been having a great killer, first 9 games of the season. They haven't been ranked since 2002. They're back in the rankings today at, I believe, number 12 is the Michigan Wolverines. I think that Dusty May has done an incredible job with the Wolverines in this short time that he's had control of the team for. Obviously he gets guys going to school with him like Golden, who he brought over from Florida Atlantic. But man, I think that Danny Wolf has been incredible for the Wolverines. 2 big guys down in the paint. They beat Wisconsin on the road at Wisconsin, who's naturally a bigger team, plays big down low. But here comes these Michigan Wolverines, who are known for shooting the 3 ball with Coach Beeline, and then, they're kind of everywhere with Juwan Howard. But now, I love this identity for the Michigan Wolverines and what they have down low. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And they're a team that's going to use a lot of things that we saw Coach May do at his previous stop. And that was a team that used their depth. They have 9 players playing over double-digit minutes. No one really big-time scorer. They have 4 players averaging 12 points a game. But I think they're going to try and beat you in different ways. And they have some great size, as you mentioned, and obviously utilize that 3-point shot. So Michigan, you're right, has to be considered, to be honest, a little bit of an early surprise. I think they've won 8 straight right now, playing extremely well. And as I mentioned, the Big Ten, an extremely strong conference, not only individually, with a lot of star players like Dylan Harper, who was the player, who I think maybe could possibly be that number 2 pick in this upcoming draft. But a lot of great teams when you look at some of the teams that they added. I think UCLA, that was kind of my team growing up. My nephew actually graduated from UCLA not too long ago, so I always follow the Bruins. But you're right. I think Wisconsin has maybe overachieved, although they lost twice in the past week, including one to their crosstown rival at Marquette there. But again, I think the Big Ten is going to be just as strong as almost any conference. But you're right. Michigan has been a little bit of a pleasant surprise so far early going on.
I want to thank you for coming on the show. We only had a short amount of time today, but it was a good way to kick off college basketball and really get things going heading into the holidays. Thank you so much, Chris Monter.
Great talking to you. Happy holidays to you and the listeners as well.
You can follow Chris on Twitter at CollegeBBNews. Again, that's at CollegeBBNews for the latest college basketball news. Thank you so much, Chris.
The boys of summer become the champions of fall.
The World Series is on its way.
And SportsGrid brings you every angle. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Chinese researchers have created a robot that can identify plants just by touching them. Mimicking the delicate touch of human skin, identifying plant species with 97% accuracy, sensing moisture and texture, machine vision can't see.
That's a very good practice.
The goal? An army of robot farm workers tirelessly monitoring, fertilizing, and applying pesticide to individual plants 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, increasing crop yields. Even identifying dangerous plant species.
That would be poison ivy.
Follow me at G Capalbo on X and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Do you use the expensive blue or yellow pills to charge your sex life? Are you thinking about it? What if we can promise you the same results for less than $3 a pill? If you're paying $20 a pill for the other pills, you're getting taken to the cleaners. Our pills deliver the exact same results for less than $3. You'll save more than $16 a pill for the same results. And right now, radio callers will get 44 blue or yellow pills for $120 with free discreet shipping. You can save more than $700 off pharmacy prices. Charge your sex life now and save a ton of money. Call now and get your 44 pills and save over $700 and qualify for free shipping. Stop overpaying and call right now.
Paid for by Steel Man Pills. 800-823-3851. 800-823-3851. 800-823-3851. That's 800-823-3851.
No way football is playing in the fall and winter.
Because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Welcome back to Carver and Lisi on Sirius XM channel 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Network. I am Matthias Burbell, and we are in the final chapter of the show. My God, what a show! And thank you to all the guests that have helped today to, make a great show on Carver and Lisi. We started with Jamie Eisenberg from CBS Sports talking fantasy football, getting you ready for fantasy playoff weekend. Mike Detillier from WWL 870 in Louisiana, giving us a LSU talk, college football talk, a SaintsReport.com. And Mike was great. I love talking to Mike every single time, man. Special thank you to Ben Davis also, chatting UFC 310, giving me a little vent session because I was doing a little sports rage right there. I was so angry about UFC 310, but also getting us ready for UFC Tampa coming up on Saturday. Joaquin Buckley against Colby Covington, big time stuff. It was awesome. Daryl Orlando Ledbetter, the legend, Hall of Famer, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Atlanta Falcons, telling us all we need to know about Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins. So many questions on X today and, surrounding the Atlanta Falcons. Is like, why not Penix? Why not Penix? Including myself, who was pulling for Penix. But after talking to Daryl, it's like they don't want to go that route. They haven't even given him the number one reps. So it would, like Daryl told us, it would take, for the Falcons to completely get thrown out of the playoffs. For the Bucs pretty much winning the division here in a couple games, if they can't do it and lock it up, for them to go to Penix and say hasta la vista to Kirk Cousins. So that was interesting and a hot take from Daryl and giving us info and him talking and having a conversation with Michael Penix about the current situation. And we finished strong with Chris Monter from collegebasketballnews.com talking early hoops, Michigan Wolverines kicking some ass lately, winning on the road, winning wherever, pretty much losing to Wake Forest, and now beating Arkansas after the break, if I'm not mistaken. What is the score to this Michigan basketball game right now? They are up by 4 at halftime against Arkansas at the Jimmy V Classic. And this game is in New York. It's in Madison Square Garden. Sam Yarnell, SportsGrid, in the house for that one. That's pretty badass. Illinois beating Wisconsin by 4 in the break with more other Big Ten action. Tennessee, the new number 1 team in the land in college basketball, getting the job done against Miami, 75-62. Did they cover that though? I don't think they did. I think they were like a 15-point favorite. I think Tennessee was 14.5. They did not cover. Oh man, I was thinking about taking Tennessee today because they're so hot and the number 1 team in the nation and everything. But the Canes, 3-7 now on the year, not having a great season like their football team. But yeah, the Vols don't cover. Duke kicks incarnate word 72-46. How much did Cooper Flagg have in this game? Cooper Flagg, only 6 points. That's surprising against a team he should have probably top 30 against. Will he be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft upcoming this season? So cool. This basketball season is electric. I got to say, it's unpredictable. It's been hard to bet. Upsets all around, all the time. It's been fun. I cannot wait for March for college basketball season. Other things going on, around professional leagues today. The Flames currently up 4-3 in hockey in the intermission in Nashville. The Bruins down 3-1 in Winnipeg during the second intermission. Oilers up 1-0 on the Lightning after the first period. 0-0 in the first period for the Utah Hockey Club and the Wild. Scores that have finished around the league. The Maple Leafs come back and beat the Devils 2-1 in overtime. The Avalanche destroy Pittsburgh Penguins in Pittsburgh 6-2. The Hurricanes take care of the Sharks in Carolina 3-2. And the Flyers beat the Jackets 5-3 in Columbus. How about them Los Angeles Kings winning on the road in New York? Sorry, George Kurtz, 3-1. In the NBA, we have some action right now. Giannis had a 30-point game today against the against the Magic, 114-109. Giannis has a great game. No Wagner, no Franz Wagner for the Orlando Magic today. His brother Mo Wagner for the Magic puts in 13 points, puts in a 3-pointer, but that's not enough because the Bucks took care of business. But Giannis, like I said, 15 shots made out of 24, 37 points for Giannis, 7 rebounds, kicking butt today against the Magic. And currently, I have a lot of plays in this game right now, actually. So I want the Thunder to kick the Magic's butt. But Klay Thompson starts off with a couple 3-pointers for the Mavs, 2 out of 5. His total was over 2.5 today. So I'm hoping he gets one more. But right now, the Oklahoma City Thunder currently lead the Mavericks 25-22 in this NBA Cup quarterfinal. I have a lot of things in that game. I want to play this game in-game live as well. Take the Thunder over 6.5 points over the Mavericks today. That's going to be my current play. We'll get more tomorrow with Carver and Lisi coming back in the seat. Sirius XM 159 on the SportsGrid Radio Network. Thank you so much for the show. Great guest today. See you guys tomorrow on Carver and Lisi. Let's go.
Luck is winning the lottery. Strategy is settling your divorce before cashing in the ticket.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.